Asia Pacific's office leasing volumes held steady in the third quarter, with cost remaining a top priority for many businesses. Here to discuss key office trends in the region is Jeremy Sheldon from JLL. Jeremy, what office trends stood out across Asia Pacific's real estate in the third quarter?
The office trends that we were seeing, I suppose you put it into two buckets. Number one is those that were expansionist, very much places like India, where the drive for good quality office space from both multinationals and domestics, and even more technology companies and other banking institutions has remained incredibly robust over the last quarter, and that was very good to see. Other markets where there has been, supply constraints like Tokyo, less so much, and then ultimately in the more high-cost locations, people looking more to renew and maybe being able to take new quality space. But ultimately, it's more of what we saw earlier in the year, where if there was a possibility to relocate to quality office space where the market has been under pressure, then people have been doing that. And in most cases, that is really being a flight to quality of space. And so good quality offices with green credentials have certainly been the beneficiary. And then within that, the ability to fit out offices in a much more sort of individual and talent attractive way. There is still a big war for talent out in the marketplace. And one of the ways of being able to do that for your organization is to have great quality office space so people are attracted back into the office.
Can you elaborate on the impact of cost considerations on leasing decisions in other markets?
Of course. As far as that is concerned, obviously, cost has been a major consideration now for a number of years. And as far as the multinational tenants are concerned, Asia is a place for growth, but it's also a place where one needs to be a little more conservative potentially in where and how they set up. So when I talk about cost constraints, ultimately organizations that are in place in the higher cost markets, then they're obviously looking for an opportunity to lower those costs. And that's a consideration, I think, for just about everybody, where ultimately they don't want to spend capital on offices. They prefer to spend capital, obviously, on expanding their businesses. But at the same time, where markets where are undersupplied, then there's not a lot of choice. But in markets where there is a lot of choice, then the ability to trade one opportunity off against another, against what capital improvements or such like we made, then that is happening. And I think that cost constrained environment will continue because people are obviously looking to see what are the next set of opportunities and what in a macroeconomic context there are opportunities abound, but there are also risks that need to be mitigated. So people are being ultimately cautious and don't want to spend too much money at this time.
So Jeremy, is this something that we should expect to see in the next few months? Considering everything you've mentioned earlier, what's your outlook for the fourth quarter and beyond?
My personal view for Asia as a whole, I think there is a massive amount of business opportunities in a lot of these locations. But what we're seeing at the present moment is still a degree of cautious optimism. And I can see it in certain markets. For instance, let's take Hong Kong as a good example, private wealth, private equity. I can see that there are going to be some positives in that space, and people are looking for occupational needs and thoughts. But it's a highly, it's an oversupplied market. So the great thing is you can move and get great deals. We can see in China that there is a return to the marketplace. Opportunities exist across that from a real estate standpoint, and there are a lot of alternatives. The case is not so much, for instance, in somewhere like Seoul, where the market is lacking space, and therefore we don't have that opportunity. But I think it's going to be much more of the same in this quarter as we finish the year. But we remain, broadly optimistic that we're going to start to see some degree of expansionism in the markets across the region, and continue to see a very robust market, as I mentioned earlier, in India. And then I think within Southeast Asia, there is, depending on where you are, whether you are in sort of Indonesia, where it's more commodity driven, or in Thailand, where it's more digitally driven, I think there are some fantastic expansion opportunities.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights, Jeremy. Looking forward to having you back on the program.
Thank you very much for your time.
Once again, that was Jeremy Sheldon, Head of Leasing Advisory at JLL in Asia Pacific. For more news, visit realestateasia.com.